Good morning and welcome to Rising and happy Friday. Jess, great to be with you today as always.
It is good to be with you again for another Rising Fridays, the last one in the old studio.
So sad, yet so exciting because the new studio is going to be wonderful. Definitely stick around for that. And we have a great show for you today with lots of different conversations. We're going to talk about how false memes translated to real life to cause chaos in the town of Springfield, Ohio. We will also look at why Israel and Hamas can't get to a ceasefire. But first, we're going to start with politics. Early voting for the presidential election has officially started in some states, and former President Donald Trump has ruled out another presidential debate against Vice President Kamala Harris before the November election. This came 2 days after the pair's contentious showdown in Philadelphia. Trump wrote on Truth Social yesterday, "When a prize fighter loses a fight, the first words out of his mouth are, 'I want a rematch.' Polls clearly show that I won the debate against Comrade Kamala Harris, the Democrats' radical left candidate, on Tuesday night, and she immediately called for a second debate. There will be no third debate." Trump argued that issues like immigration and inflation were thoroughly discussed during his June debate with President Joe Biden. The former president also claimed victory over Harris at their debate during his rally in Tucson, Arizona on Thursday.
We had a monumental victory over Comrade Kamala Harris in the presidential debate. We won big with independent voters, moderates, Republicans, and working people all across this nation, putting forward a clear vision to, very simply, make America great again. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris showed up spewing empty rhetoric, the same old lies, meaningless platitudes.
Another big Trump announcement came yesterday. Georgia Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee discussed 2 of the 10 criminal counts in the 2020 election interference case against Trump. McAfee found state prosecutors did not have the authority to bring charges of conspiracy and filing false documents, fighting the results of the 2020 election, because they were outside of the state's power. So, Amber, what does that mean for the GOP candidate? And could this move to be in his favor? Or are people still paying attention to this case, people that are in his base that are considering voting for him?
I think people are not as much paying attention to the criminal cases because so many of them have fallen apart. I mean, with Jack Smith being ruled an unconstitutional hire in the January 6th case, then you have this case in Georgia, or I think it was the classified documents case, where he was found to not be properly appointed. And then you have in the Georgia case, this is the second round of charges that have been dropped from this case. There's actually still a hearing to determine whether or not DA Fani Willis can continue to prosecute the case. So that's probably not going to be resolved until after the election. And then you also had a delay on the sentencing of the Manhattan hush money case, where it was delayed from, it was supposed to be either this week or next, delayed until December, which was the second or third time that the sentencing had been delayed. So all of these cases are happening after the election. There's not going to be this big headline about either Trump being thrown in jail or given community service or even being convicted on another set of charges. It seems like that's probably not going to affect the election at this point. So I think he can pretty much wipe his brow and breathe a sigh of relief that all of this is going to be further down the line after people have already casted their ballots.
Right, and potentially if he's president, it won't matter, even if he's sentenced in November there in the case where the sentencing has been pushed until just after the election. A lot of these cases are taking a lot of time, and they're cases that could have been started sooner. If you have the January 6th committee presenting the evidence on 2020, why were they able to compile evidence quicker than in the criminal case in Fulton County? It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like they stalled on purpose and to their detriment now that these cases are mostly going to be wrapping up after the election. And so Donald Trump talking about the debate now, I want to turn to that, saying that he actually won, and if he had lost, this theory that he would have been asking for a rematch and he's not, so surely he won. I just think that attacking the moderators afterwards is a loser move that's Definitely not something you'd see from the winning side. I do think it was a bit of a cope. We see polling show that with a 23% margin, people say Harris won the debate. I think it's a bit of a cope, but I think Kamala should just accept this, not push for another debate, just say I want one and quit while she's ahead, because it's very possible he could train differently and learn from his mistakes and show up strong in a second debate.
I actually agree that she should avoid a second debate. Historically, Trump has performed better in second debates than he has in the first debate. He's shown that he's coachable. Perhaps he wasn't prepared for Kamala to bait him on some of these questions, and he kind of fell into the trap. I think that's fair to say. Generally speaking, I do think she won. However, I don't think it was as handily of a victory as some people are saying, and here's why. So this CNN poll that showed voters giving the win to Harris had her at a 63% win versus 37% who said Trump won. But that's actually an underperformance compared to Hillary in 2016. There was a wider gap there that said that she won 62% to 27%. Obviously, we know what the election outcome ended up being in 2016. And then JL Partners did a poll of 800 independent voters and found that the gap was much smaller. Only 49% to 43% said that Harris won over Trump. And then perhaps more importantly, they said on the issues that matter most to voters, Trump beat Harris. On the economy, on immigration, on foreign policy, by double digits, they all said that Trump performed better. So I think you could say that maybe rhetorically Kamala won, or maybe even on temperament, but on the issues, Trump performed better. And I don't think that this debate, based on the commentary that's been happening afterwards, is going to impact a lot of people's votes, just based on this polling and the general fact that it's mostly out of the news cycle at this point. People are not even really talking about it much besides us. And then I do think it's fair to criticize the moderators, even if it might be considered cope. Trump, of course, has complained about moderators even when he has won. But I think it's reasonable to do that because they did fact check Kamala Harris way more. They fact-checked Trump way more than they did Kamala Harris. In fact, I think they fact-checked her maybe once, if at all. And there were demonstrated lies that she did tell during the debate. And it's not the moderator's job to sit there and try to inject themselves into the conversation, constantly interrupting or fact-checking or trying to argue with one of the candidates. It's the candidate's job to prepare for the debate and fact check their opponent if they feel like they said something false. So they did have an impact in the debate, and they behaved, I thought, unprofessionally and biased. So I thought it was totally fair to call that out.
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of policy plan talk. We did hear about concepts of a plan from Trump. We heard about Kamala Harris's economic plan, the down payment assistance, the tax credits, the small business $50,000 tax credit, which we haven't heard her speak about as much as the other two. But I think that the type of people who watch for the plans, who watch to hear them go back and forth about policy and defend their platform, we didn't get that at all. We also didn't get sound bites. And I think that's the biggest thing that has an impact on people beyond the folks that are extremely clued into politics. Now, some people who are maybe active voters who watch the debate to make up their mind, watch the debate in full, but I think for the majority of the people in America, they see the debate in the clips, and it just wasn't a very clippy debate. And Trump did have the final word on just about every point. The moderators let him step in a ton. And so he had more speaking time than Kamala Harris by at least 7 minutes. And so when you consider those factors, I do think the moderators were more than fair, maybe should have cut him off a little bit more. Maybe then we would have gotten some more clippy, more concise talking points from either of them. But that was really missing this time around. And it was definitely there during the Trump and Hillary debate.
I do think he had more speaking time because the moderators were asking him more challenging follow-up questions as compared to Kamala. But we're going to, of course, continue to talk about this here on Rising. Please stick around. We're going to have more after this.